The Rodriguez family's backyard was alive with the sounds of celebration. Red, white, and blue streamers fluttered in the warm Phoenix breeze as the 4th of July barbecue reached its peak. The smell of Carlos's famous carne asada filled the air, mixing with the laughter of children and the clinking of beer bottles. Maria wiped sweat from her forehead as she carried another tray of food to the picnic table, her sundress sticking to her back in the 105-degree heat. "Mia, slow down," her mother called from the shade of the Ramada. "You're working too hard." But Maria couldn't slow down. This was their first big family gathering since moving to Phoenix 6 months ago, and everything had to be perfect. Cousins had driven in from Tucson. Old friends from their previous neighborhood, Glendale, had made the trip, and even Carlos's brother Roberto had flown in from Denver. The backyard buzzed with at least 30 people, maybe more. 3-year-old Emma Rodriguez was the star of the show, as always. Her dark curls bounced as she ran between the adults, her tiny hands sticky with watermelon juice and her face smeared with chocolate from the patriotic cake. She wore her favorite dress, the one with little American flags printed all over it, that made her feel like a princess. "Look, Mommy," Emma called out, spinning in circles on the patio. "I'm a tornado." Maria laughed, snapping a photo with her phone. "Careful, mi amor. Don't make yourself dizzy." But Emma was already off to her next adventure, drawn like a magnet to the swing set Carlos had installed just 2 weeks earlier. She climbed onto the red plastic seat, her little legs pumping furiously as she tried to swing higher. "Push me, Tio Roberto," she demanded when her uncle walked by with a plate of food. Doc Roberto, a gentle giant of a man with calloused hands from his construction job, set down his plate and gave Emma the pushes she craved. "Higher, Mia? Higher! Higher! I want to touch the clouds." The afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the mountains, painting the desert landscape in shades of gold and orange. Mariachi music played from Carlos's Bluetooth speaker while the adults settled into lawn chairs, cold drinks in hand, watching the children play. It was one of those perfect moments that families remember forever, the kind that gets talked about at future gatherings, the kind that makes you grateful for simple blessings. That's when everything changed. Maria was inside the kitchen, refilling the ice bucket when she heard Carlos's voice rise above the music. "Emma? Emma, where are you?" She paused, ice scoop in hand. Carlos's tone had shifted from casual to concerned in a way that made her stomach tighten. Through the kitchen window, she could see him walking around the swing set, looking behind the playset. "Emma," he called again, louder this time. Maria dropped the ice scoop and rushed outside. "What's wrong?" "I don't see Emma," Carlos said, his voice tight. "She was just on the swing." Roberto was pushing her, and then he spun around. "Roberto, where's Emma?" Roberto looked up from his conversation with 2 cousins, confusion written across his face. "She was on the swing. I pushed her for maybe 5 minutes. Then she said she wanted to get down. That was maybe 10 minutes ago. 10 minutes. In a house full of family, no one had eyes on a 3-year-old for 10 minutes. Imame! Maria's scream cut through the party chatter like a knife. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Beer bottles froze halfway to lips. Children stopped running. The backyard erupted into organized chaos. 30 adults scattered in every direction, calling Emma's name. Maria's sister checked under the patio table. Carlos yanked open the shed door. Roberto and 3 cousins spread out to check behind every tree, every bush, every possible hiding spot. "Check the house," Maria yelled, her voice already hoarse with panic. Every room, every closet, every cabinet. They tore through the small ranch house like a SWAT team. Bedrooms, bathrooms, closets, under beds, behind curtains. Maria ripped open the pantry door, praying to see Emma's giggling face. Nothing. The pool. Someone shouted. Carlos vaulted over the fence into the neighbor's yard, where their above-ground pool sat empty. They'd seen Emma looking at it through the fence slats earlier. His heart hammered as he climbed the ladder and looked down into the blue depths. Empty. Back in their yard, Maria's mother was on her knees, checking under the deck. Emma, Abuela is looking for you. Come out, Mia. Minutes felt like hours. The sun was getting lower, and shadows were growing longer. Maria's hands shook as she called 911, barely able to form the words, "My daughter is missing." That's when Carlos noticed the gate. The back gate that led to the alley, the one they always kept latched, hung wide open. The metal latch that Emma couldn't reach even on her tiptoes had somehow been undone. "The gate's open," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Maria's phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering onto the concrete. Beyond that gate lay the busy street, the desert, the vast unknown of a city that could swallow a small child without a trace. Neighbors started appearing. Mrs. Chun from next door, the Thompson family from across the street, people Maria had only waved to before. Word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. A little girl in a flag dress was missing. As the first police sirens wailed in the distance, Maria sank to her knees beside the open gate, Carlos's strong arms wrapping around her shoulders. Their perfect family barbecue had become their worst nightmare. Emma, their baby, their light, their everything, had vanished into the Arizona desert heat. And somewhere in the growing darkness, a 3-year-old girl was alone, lost and running, out of time. The first police cruiser arrived within 7 minutes of Maria's 911 call, its red and blue lights painting the Rodriguez house in urgent colors. Officer Sarah Martinez stepped out, her radio crackling with dispatch updates as she approached the frantic family gathered in the driveway. "Mrs. Rodriguez? I'm Officer Martinez. Tell me about Emma." Maria's words tumbled out in a mixture of English and Spanish, her hands gesturing wildly as she described her daughter. "She's 3 years old, about this tall, dark curly hair, brown eyes. She was wearing a white dress with little American flags on it and pink sandals. She just disappeared." "When did you last see her?" Martinez asked, pulling out her notebook. "Maybe 20 minutes ago? 30? I don't know." Maria's voice cracked. "She was on the swing. Then she wasn't. Then the gate was open." She couldn't finish the sentence. Carlos stepped forward, his arm around his wife's shoulders. "Officer, our daughter has never wandered off before. She's scared of the dark, scared of being alone. Something's wrong." Martinez nodded grimly. In Phoenix, missing child cases were treated with extreme urgency, especially in summer. The desert was unforgiving, and temperatures that felt merely hot to adults could be deadly for small children. She keyed her radio. "Dispatch, I need additional units at 4247 Desert Rose Drive. Missing 3-year-old, possible wandering situation. Request K9 units and supervisor response." Within minutes, the quiet residential street transformed into a command center. Police cars lined both sides of the road, officers going door to door with Emma's photo. The fire department arrived with search equipment, followed by a Phoenix police helicopter that began circling overhead with its powerful searchlight, cutting through the growing dusk. That's when Officer Jake Mitchell arrived with Rex. Mitchell was a 10-year veteran of the Phoenix Police Department, but he'd been working with K9 units for only 3 years. Rex, his German Shepherd partner, had been with him for all of those years. A beautiful, intelligent dog with a thick coat of black and tan fur and alert amber eyes that missed nothing. They'd worked dozens of cases together, drug busts, building searches, crowd control. But search and rescue was Rex's specialty, and he was good at it. Very good. "This is Rex," Mitchell told Maria as he approached with the powerful dog at his side. He's going to help us find Emma. Can you give me something that belongs to her? Something she's worn recently?" Maria ran into the house and returned with Emma's favorite pajamas, a pink set with cartoon unicorns that still smelled like her daughter's strawberry shampoo. Rex buried his muzzle in the fabric, his nostrils flaring as he absorbed Emma's scent. His tail wagged once, then his demeanor shifted to complete focus. "He's got it," Mitchell said. "Rex, find her. Find Emma." The German shepherd immediately put his nose to the ground and began working, his powerful body moving with purpose across the Rodriguez backyard. He traced Emma's path from the swing set to the patio, then to the gate. At the open gate, he paused. His head lifted to catch airborne scent particles. "She went this way," Mitchell announced, following Rex as the dog moved with increasing confidence down the alley behind the houses. The search team spread out, officers on foot, others in patrol. Cars, the helicopter maintaining its aerial surveillance. Rex led them through the neighborhood, past backyard fences, and through empty lots dotted with desert vegetation. The dog never hesitated, never lost the trail, his nose working like a biological GPS system. Maria and Carlos followed in their car, refusing to stay behind despite police suggestions. Through the windshield, they watched Rex work, their hope rising and falling with every turn the dog made. When Rex paused to investigate a scent, their hearts stopped. When he moved on, they breathed again. "Where is she going?" Maria whispered. Watching Rex lead the procession away from their safe suburban neighborhood toward the newer developments on the outskirts of town. The sun was setting now, painting the Arizona sky in brilliant oranges and purples that would have been beautiful under any other circumstances. But with each passing minute, the temperature was starting to drop. In the desert, summer days could reach 115 degrees, but nights could plummet to the 60s. A 3-year-old in a thin dress wouldn't last long once the cold set in. Rex suddenly changed pace, his movement becoming more urgent. Mitchell had to jog to keep up as the dog led them toward a new housing development called Desert Oaks Estates. Construction equipment dotted the landscape: bulldozers, cement mixers, stacks of lumber, and deep foundation holes waiting to become dream homes. "Jesus," muttered Sergeant Davis, the search coordinator. She came into a construction site. The area was a maze of danger. Deep holes, some 20 feet deep, waited like traps in the darkness. Heavy machinery sat idle but menacing. Stacks of rebar and concrete blocks created an obstacle course that would challenge an adult, let alone a frightened 3-year-old. Rex began moving faster, weaving between the construction debris with Mitchell close behind. The helicopter spotlight swept across the site, illuminating the dangers that surrounded them. Other officers spread out, flashlights probing every shadow, every potential hiding spot. That's when Rex suddenly stopped. The German shepherd stood at the edge of a massive excavation, a foundation hole for what would someday be someone's family. Room. The concrete forms rose from the earth like the walls of a deep, narrow canyon. Rex whimpered, a sound Mitchell had never heard from his partner before. It was a sound of distress, of urgency, of something being very wrong. Mitchell shined his powerful flashlight into the depths of the hole. 20 feet down, concrete walls, shadows within shadows. "Emma!" he shouted. "Emma? Can you hear me?" The silence that answered back was the most terrifying sound any parent could imagine. But Rex wasn't silent. The dog began barking frantically. Pawing at the edge of the hole, his amber eyes locked on something in the darkness below that human eyes couldn't see. Something was down there, and Rex was determined not to leave without it. Rex's barking echoed through the construction site like gunshots in the desert night. The German shepherd had positioned himself at the very edge of the foundation hole, his powerful body trembling with agitation, his amber eyes fixed on something. 20 feet below that the human searchers couldn't see. "What is it, boy?" Officer Mitchell whispered, kneeling beside his partner. In 3 years of working together, he'd learned to read Rex's body language like a book. This wasn't the alert posture Rex used for drugs or weapons. This wasn't even his usual search and rescue stance. This was something else entirely, something desperate and urgent that made the hair on Mitchell's arm stand up. Fire Captain Rodriguez know. Relation to Emma's family arrived with the technical rescue team at 11:47 p.m. The massive fire truck's floodlights transformed the construction site into a harsh, whitewashed moonscape. Shadows danced between concrete forms and construction equipment as the rescue team assessed the situation. "We've got a foundation hole, approximately 20 feet deep, maybe 4 feet wide at the top, narrowing to about 18 inches at the bottom," Captain Rodriguez reported into his radio. "Concrete forms on all sides. If someone's down there..." He didn't need to finish. Everyone understood the implications. A fall into that narrow space could be fatal. And if someone had survived the fall, getting them out would require precision, patience, and a miracle. Rex hadn't stopped barking. If anything, his distress had intensified. He paced back and forth along the edge of the hole, whimpering between barks, occasionally pawing at the concrete lip until his claws scraped against the rough surface. "Rex, quiet," Mitchell commanded, but for the first time in their partnership, the dog ignored him completely. Maria and Carlos arrived as the rescue team was setting up their equipment. Maria broke away from the police officer trying to keep her back and ran toward the hole, but Carlos caught her arm before she could get too close. "Emma," she screamed into the darkness. "Emma, Mammy's here." The silence that rose from the depths was crushing. The only sounds were the generator powering the floodlights, the crackle of police radios, and Rex's increasingly frantic barking. "Mom, please step back," Captain Rodriguez said gently. "We're going to lower a camera down first, see what we're dealing with." The technical rescue team worked with military precision. They anchored their rope systems to the fire truck, tested every piece of equipment twice, and prepared for what they all hoped wouldn't become a recovery operation instead of a rescue. Firefighter Sarah Chen, a petite woman whose small size made her perfect for confined space rescues, prepared to rappel into the hole with the camera equipment. But first, they lowered a probe camera on a flexible cable, its LED lights cutting through the darkness below. The monitor showed concrete walls covered in construction dust, rebar jutting at dangerous angles, and debris that had fallen into the narrow space. 20 feet down, then 25, then... "Wait," Captain Rodriguez said, adjusting the camera angle. "There. Do you see that? A flash of white fabric. A tiny pink sandal. And something else that made every adult present hold their breath. The slight rise and fall of a small chest. "She's alive," Mitchell breathed. "Rex, you beautiful dog. She's alive." But alive and rescuable were two different things. The camera revealed that Emma was wedged in the narrowest part of the foundation, trapped between two concrete forms in a space barely wider than her small body. She appeared to be unconscious, her face pale in the harsh LED lights, her flag dress torn and dirty. "How long has she been down there?" Dr. Patricia Wells asked. The pediatric emergency physician had arrived with the paramedics, and her expression was grim as she studied the monitor. "Based on when she went missing, maybe 4 to 5 hours," Mitchell replied, his hand resting on Rex's head. The dog had finally quieted, but remained intensely focused on the hole. "Hypothermia is our biggest concern," Dr. Wells explained. "Desert. Temperatures can drop 40 degrees at night. A 3-year-old can't regulate body temperature like an adult. We need to get her out fast." The rescue operation that followed was like nothing the Phoenix Fire Department had ever attempted. The space was too narrow for their usual equipment. too deep for a simple ladder rescue. Too dangerous for anything but their most experienced. Confined Space Rescue Specialist. Firefighter Chun began her descent at 1:23 a.m., carrying warming blankets, oxygen equipment, and medical supplies in a specially designed pack. The rope creaked as she disappeared into the hole, her helmet light creating a small circle of illumination in the vast darkness. "I can see her," Sean's voice crackled over the radio. "She's wedged pretty tight, but I think I can get to her." Above ground, Rex had positioned himself where he could see down into the hole. His ears were pricked forward, his body alert but no longer agitated. It was as if he knew help was finally coming. "Emma? Emma? Can you hear me?" Chun's voice echoed from below. "My name is Sarah. I'm here to help you." For what felt like an eternity, there was no response. Then, so faint was almost lost in the radio static, came a tiny voice. "Doggy?" The crowd of rescuers above ground erupted in restrained cheers. Rex's tail wagged once, a single thump against the concrete. "That's right, sweetheart," Chun replied. "The doggy found you. He's a very good doggy. Now I need you to stay very still while I help you, okay?" The extraction took another hour. Chun had to carefully maneuver warming blankets around Emma's tiny body, starting 4 for fluids, and figure out how to lift the child from a space barely wider than a mailbox. Every movement had to be calculated, every decision potentially life or death. When Emma finally emerged from that hole at 2:47 a.m., strapped to a specialized rescue board and covered in thermal blankets, the first thing she saw was Rex's face, looking down at her. "Good doggy," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but the sweetest sound anyone had ever heard. Rex leaned down and gently licked her forehead, his tail wagging properly for the first time all night. Emma Rodriguez was alive and going home. The pediatric intensive care unit at Phoenix Children's Hospital hummed with quiet efficiency at 4:30 a.m. Emma Rodriguez lay in the center bed, dwarfed by the medical equipment surrounding her small form. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking her heart rate, oxygen levels, and body temperature, as heated blankets slowly brought her core temperature back to normal. Dr. Patricia Wells studied the latest test results with a mixture of relief and concern. "Physically, she's remarkably well," she told Maria and Carlos, who hadn't left Emma's bedside since the ambulance arrived. "Mild hypothermia, some dehydration, minor cuts and bruises. No broken bones, no internal injuries. Medically speaking, she's a very lucky little girl." But luck didn't explain everything. How long was she unconscious down there? Maria asked, smoothing Emma's tangled curls away from her forehead. Her daughter's face was still too pale, her breathing too shallow. Based on the timeline and her condition, probably 3 to 4 hours, Dr. Wells replied. "That's actually concerning. Hypothermia doesn't typically cause unconsciousness that quickly in children, especially not at the temperatures we had last night." Carlos leaned forward in his chair. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying her body shut down faster than it should have, almost like a protective mechanism. It's not uncommon in severe trauma cases. The mind essentially checks out to protect itself from overwhelming stress." When Emma finally opened her eyes at 6:15 a.m., her first word wasn't mama or papa. It was doggy. "Where's the doggy?" she asked, her voice hoarse and small. "Where's Rex?" Maria exchanged glances with Carlos. "Rex? Honey, how do you know the dog's name?" "He told me," Emma said matter-of-factly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Rex is a good doggy. He found me in the scary place." Dr. Wells made a note in Emma's chart. Children often anthropomorphized animals, especially after traumatic experiences. It was normal for Emma to assign human qualities to the dog who had saved her. What wasn't normal was what happened next. when Officer Mitchell arrived for a welfare check that afternoon, bringing Rex for what the hospital's child psychologist, Dr. Amanda Foster, called closure therapy. Emma's reaction was immediate and intense. "Rex!" she squealed, trying to sit up in bed, despite the 4 lines. "You came back. You came back like you promised." Mitchell looked confused. "Promised?" Emma nodded vigorously. "In the dark place. You said you'd come back and check on me. You said good. Doggies always keep their promises." Rex approached the bed cautiously, his training warring with his obvious desire to comfort the child. When Mitchell gave him the release command, the German Shepherd gently placed his head on the bed next to Emma's hand. "Good boy," Emma whispered, scratching behind his ears. "Did you tell them about the nice man?" The room fell silent. "What nice man, sweetheart?" Dr. Foster asked gently, pulling out her notepad. "The nice man in the dark place with me. He was hurt bad, but he kept me warm. He sang songs and told me stories so I wouldn't be scared." Maria felt her blood run cold. "Emma, baby, you were alone in that hole?" The rescuers checked. "There was nobody else there." "Yes, there was," Emma insisted, her voice rising. "He was there the whole time. He said his name was Harry, and he was looking for his wife. He said she makes the best chocolate chip cookies in the whole world." Dr. Foster exchanged a meaningful look with Dr. Wells. Trauma-induced hallucinations weren't uncommon in children, especially after periods of unconsciousness. The mind often created protective figures to help cope with terrifying situations. "Tell me about Harry," Dr. Foster said in her most soothing voice. "What did he look like?" Emma's eyes brightened. "He had gray hair and wrinkles around his eyes, like Abuelo. He was wearing a red shirt with a little horse on it. And he was really, really tired." "What else did Harry tell you?" "He said he fell. In the hole, too, but he fell in a different part where it was even darker. He couldn't climb out because his leg was broken. He said," Emma paused, her 3-year-old vocabulary struggling with adult concepts. "He said he was scared his wife Susan would think he left her." The specificity of the details troubled Dr. Foster. Trauma hallucinations were usually vague, fragmented. Emma's description was remarkably coherent and detailed for a 3-year-old, especially one who had been unconscious for hours. Over the next 2 days, as Emma's physical condition improved, her psychological evaluation became more concerning. She consistently told the same story about Harry, adding new details each time, but never contradicting herself. She drew pictures with broken crayon stick figures in a dark space, 2 people instead of 1, a figure in red lying at the bottom of what looked like a well. "The nice man is still down there," Emma told Dr. Foster during their 3rd session. "He can't get out by himself. Rex knows." Rex tried to tell everyone, but nobody listened. "Emma, the construction workers checked that hole very carefully when they pulled you out. There was nobody else there." Emma's face scrunched up in frustration. "They didn't look in the right place. Harry's in the really deep part, where the water drips. He said he could hear me, but I couldn't see him." Dr. Foster made more notes. The child's insistence was becoming problematic. Emma refused to sleep, without Rex present, claiming she had promised Harry that Rex would help him too. She barely ate, worried that Harry was hungry. She asked constantly when someone was going to rescue him. Meanwhile, Detective Sarah Martinez had begun investigating the circumstances of Emma's fall. The construction site had multiple safety violations: no barriers around the excavation, inadequate lighting, no security to keep children out. Sunset Development LLC was facing serious criminal charges. "We'll need Emma's testimony," Martinez told Carlos during a meeting at the hospital. "She's the only witness to how this happened. But given her age and the trauma, she keeps talking about this imaginary man," Carlos said. The doctors say it's normal, but it's disturbing. She's so convinced he's real. Martinez nodded sympathetically. Children process trauma differently than adults. The important thing is that she's alive and safe. But that night, as Emma slept fitfully in her hospital bed, with Rex lying on a blanket beside her, she whispered something that made the night nurse stop in her tracks. "Don't worry, Harry. Rex remembers where you are. He's going to bring help soon. Good doggies always keep their promises." In the morning, Dr. Foster would add another note to Emma's file. Patient continues to demonstrate remarkable consistency in trauma-related hallucinations. Recommend continued observation and therapy. What she didn't write was the growing unease. She felt every time Emma mentioned Harry, because sometimes the most impossible things turned out to be true. The law offices of Chon and Associates buzzed with controlled chaos on a humid Tuesday morning in late July. Attorney Sarah Chon sat across from Maria and Carlos Rodriguez in her downtown Phoenix office. Case files spread across the mahogany conference table like battle plans. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city shimmered in the desert heat. But inside the air-conditioned sanctuary, the temperature was about to get much hotter. "The construction company is liable, no question," Chon said, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses as she reviewed the inspection reports. Sunset Development violated at least 8 safety codes. No barriers around excavations, inadequate site security, improper lighting. This is a slam-dunk case. She paused, tapping her pen against the legal pad covered in her precise handwriting. "But there's a complication." Carlos leaned forward. "What kind of complication?" "Emma's testimony. She's our key witness, the only person who can describe exactly how the accident happened. But she's 3 years old. And she's?" Chun searched for the right words. "She's been telling some very specific stories about things that couldn't have happened." Maria's face tightened. "The doctors say it's normal. Children create imaginary friends after trauma." "I understand that," Chun replied gently. "But defense attorneys aren't child psychologists. They're sharks who smell blood in the water. Marcus Webb is representing Sunset Development, and he's one of the most ruthless corporate defense lawyers in Arizona. He'll use Emma's statements about this hairy person to discredit everything she says." The door to the conference room opened, and Chun's paralegal, Jennifer, stuck her head in. "Sarah, the prosecutor's office is online too. Detective Martinez wants to discuss the criminal charges." Chun picked up the phone, switching to speaker mode. "Detective Martinez? I have the Rodriguez family here. What's the latest on the criminal case?" Martinez's voice crackled through the speaker. "We're moving forward with criminal negligence charges against Sunset Development. Multiple safety violations, failure to secure a hazardous site. But the DA wants Emma's testimony for the criminal trial too." "That's where we have a problem," Chun said. "Emma is not a typical witness." "I've read Dr. Foster's reports," Martinez replied. "The child is consistent in her story, but she claims there was another person in that excavation. Our crime scene team went over every inch of that site. There was nobody else there." Carlos spoke up. "Detective, my daughter nearly died. If testifying helps prevent this from happening to another child, we'll do whatever it takes." "I appreciate that, Mr. Rodriguez. But you need to understand what you're up against. Defense attorneys will question everything: Emma's age, her mental state, her ability to distinguish reality from imagination. They'll argue that a 3-year-old's testimony is inherently unreliable." Chun nodded grimly. "Which brings me to my recommendation. I want to request that Rex be present during Emma's testimony." The silence on the phone was telling. "A therapy dog in the courtroom?" Martinez finally asked. "Is that even legal?" "It's been done in other jurisdictions," Chun explained. "Therapy animals for child witnesses, especially in trauma cases. But it's rare, and it would require Judge Hawthorne's approval. She's traditional in her approach to courtroom procedures. Maria looked confused. Why Rex specifically? Why not just any therapy dog? Because Emma has bonded with Rex in a way that goes beyond normal trauma response, John said, consulting doctor. Fosters psychological evaluation. She sleeps better when he's present, communicates more clearly, shows less anxiety. More importantly, she trusts him. If we can get her to testify coherently about the actual fall, leaving aside the imaginary friend issue, we can prove Sunset Development's negligence. 3 days later, Chun stood in Judge Patricia Hawthorne's chambers, facing the most important argument of her career. Judge Hawthorne was known for running a traditional courtroom. No cameras, no disruptions, and definitely no animals. Your Honor, Chun began, we're dealing with an unprecedented situation. A 3-year-old witness to a potentially criminal act of negligence, who suffered severe trauma and has developed a specific therapeutic relationship with the canine officer who rescued her. Judge Hawthorne, a stern woman in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, studied the psychological reports. Ms. Chun, this court has never allowed an animal during testimony. What legal precedent are you citing? People v. Spence in California, where a therapy dog was allowed for a 7-year-old sexual assault victim. Torres v. State in Texas, involving a child witness in a domestic violence case. And most recently, State v. Crawford in Colorado, where a service dog accompanied an autistic child during testimony. Marcus Webb, the defense attorney representing Sunset Development, scoffed from his chair. Your Honor, this is a transparent attempt to manipulate the jury's emotions. A cute dog sitting next to a traumatized child? The prejudicial effect far outweighs any probative value. Mr. Webb, Judge Hawthorne said coolly, I'll determine what's prejudicial in my courtroom. Chun pressed her advantage. Your Honor, we're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for reasonable accommodation to ensure that a child witness can provide clear, coherent testimony about a serious crime. Emma Rodriguez cannot effectively testify without Rex present. The psychological evaluation clearly demonstrates this. And what about the child's claims regarding another person at the scene? Webb interjected. Are we to believe that a 3-year-old's imagination should be given the same weight as physical evidence? The defense is free to cross-examine the witness regarding any inconsistencies, Chun replied. But Emma's testimony about the actual fall, how she got through the gate, what she was doing at the construction site, how she ended up in that excavation, is crucial evidence that the jury deserves to hear. Judge Hawthorne was quiet for a long moment, reviewing the case files. This is highly irregular. But the law requires that we make reasonable accommodations for witnesses, especially children. I'm going to allow the therapy dog, with strict conditions. Webb's face reddened. Your Honor, I object strenuously. Mr. Webb, your objection is noted and overruled. The dog will remain calm and quiet during testimony. Any disruption, and the animal will be removed immediately. Ms. Chun, you'd better hope this child can provide coherent testimony, because if this turns into a circus, I'll hold you in contempt. As they left the courthouse, Chun felt a mixture of victory and terror. She had won the battle for Rex's presence, that the war was just beginning. In 2 weeks, Emma Rodriguez would take the witness stand in one of the most watched trials in Phoenix history. And Marcus Webb was already planning his attack. The Maricopa County Superior Court buzzed with an energy that bailiff Tom Morrison had never experienced in his 23 years of service. By 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before the trial was scheduled to begin, news vans lined the street outside the courthouse. Reporters clutched coffee cups and practiced their opening lines while camera crews jockeyed for the best positions. Inside courtroom 4B, Judge Patricia Hawthorne surveyed the scene with barely concealed irritation. Every seat in the gallery was filled with overflow spectators standing along the walls. Court reporters from 3 major newspapers sat in the front row, laptops ready. In the back, she spotted what appeared to be a documentary film crew, despite her explicit ban on cameras. "Bailiff Morrison," she called. "Remove those cameras immediately." The case had captured national attention in a way nobody had anticipated. Social media had exploded with the story of the miracle toddler and her hero dog. #Rex the Hero was trending on Twitter. A GoFundMe page for Emma's medical expenses had raised over $200,000. Celebrity dog trainer Caesar Milan had offered to visit Emma personally. But behind the media circus was a 3-year-old girl who just wanted to go home. Emma sat in the witness preparation room with her parents, wearing a new blue dress that her grandmother had bought specially for court. Her dark curls had been carefully braided, and she clutched a small stuffed dog that looked remarkably like Rex. "Remember what we practiced, Mia," Maria said gently, kneeling to Emma's level. "Tell the truth about what happened. Just like you told Dr. Foster." Emma nodded solemnly. "And Rex will be there?" "Rex will be right next to you the whole time," Sarah Chun assured her, checking her watch. In 15 minutes, they would walk into that courtroom and make legal history. Officer Jake Mitchell arrived with Rex at 9:15 a.m., both of them looking unusually formal. Mitchell wore his dress uniform, complete with commendations and polished badge. Rex had been groomed to perfection, his black and tan coat gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Around his neck, he wore a special collar, identifying him as a certified therapy dog, though he was still very much a working police K-9. "How's our star witness?" Mitchell asked Emma with a gentle smile. "Rex looks handsome," Emma giggled, reaching out to pet the dog. Rex responded by sitting perfectly still, allowing her small hands to scratch behind his ears. The transformation in Emma's demeanor was immediate. Her shoulders relaxed, her breathing steadied, and the anxious fidgeting. STOPPE Day. Dr. Amanda Foster observed the interaction with professional interest. "It's remarkable," she told Chun quietly. "I've never seen such a specific therapeutic bond between a child and an animal. It's almost like he knows exactly what she needs." At 9:30 a.m. sharp, Judge Hawthorne's bailiff called the court to order. The gallery fell silent as Emma Rodriguez, holding Officer Mitchell's hand with Rex walking calmly beside them, entered the courtroom that would determine her future. The sight was unprecedented. A tiny girl in a blue dress, dwarfed by the massive courtroom, walking with confident steps because a German shepherd was by her side. Several jurors leaned forward in their seats. One woman in the back row wiped her eyes. Marcus Webb, the defense attorney, watched the procession with calculating eyes. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, studying every precedent, every possible angle of attack. His strategy was simple: prove that Emma Rodriguez was an unreliable witness whose testimony had been coached by adults and contaminated by trauma-induced fantasies. "Your Honor," Webb said, rising from his seat, "before we proceed, I must renew my objection to the presence of this animal." "The prejudicial effect, Mr. Webb," Judge Hawthorne interrupted. "Your objection has been noted and overruled. Please, take your seat." The witness stand had been specially modified for Emma's testimony. A booster seat raised her to an appropriate height, and a small step stool allowed Rex to lie comfortably beside the chair. Court technicians had tested the microphone multiple times to ensure Emma's soft voice would be clearly heard. As Emma settled into the witness chair with Rex beside her, the courtroom held its collective breath. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the testimony that would either bring justice for a near tragedy or become a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting emotions override evidence. Sarah Chun approached the witness stand with careful, measured steps. "Good morning, Emma," Can you tell everyone your full name? Emma Maria Rodriguez, came the clear reply, Emma's hand resting on Rex's head. And how old are you, Emma? I'm 3 years old. I'll be 4 in November. Emma, do you remember the day you got lost? Emma nodded. It was the day with fireworks. We had a party in the backyard. Can you tell us what happened that day? Emma's voice was steady as she began her story. I was swinging on my swing set. Tuo Roberto was pushing me really high. Then I saw a pretty yellow butterfly, and I wanted to catch it. The courtroom was silent, except for the soft scratching of pens on paper as reporters took notes. Emma's testimony was remarkably coherent for a 3-year-old, her memory surprisingly detailed about the events leading up to her disappearance. Where did the butterfly go, Emma? It flew over the fence. I opened the gate to follow it, but then it flew away and I couldn't find my way back home. Marcus Webb made notes furiously. So far, nothing Emma had said was inconsistent with the known facts, but he was waiting for his moment. What happened after you couldn't find your way home? Chun continued. I walked and walked, and it got dark and scary. Then I saw the big holes where they were building new houses. I was trying to get around them, but the ground was loose, and I fell in. Emma paused, her small hand gripping Rex's fur. The dog remained perfectly still, his amber eyes alert but calm. It was really deep and dark, and I couldn't climb out. I called for help, but nobody could hear me. Were you alone in that hole, Emma? Emma looked directly at the jury, her 3-year-old honesty shining through. No, there was a nice man named Harry. He was hurt and couldn't get out either. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Hawthorne gavelled for order, but the damage was done. Webb smiled for the first time all morning. The circus had officially begun. The whispers in the courtroom died to absolute silence as Marcus Webb rose from his chair like a predator who had finally cornered his prey. His expensive suit was perfectly pressed, his silver hair immaculately styled, and his smile carried the confidence of a man who had destroyed countless witnesses before Emma Rodriguez. Your Honor, I'd like to cross-examine the witness, Webb announced, his voice carrying across the packed courtroom. Judge Hawthorne nodded curtly. Proceed, Mr. Webb, but remember, this is a 3-year-old child. Webb approached the witness stand, with calculated steps, his briefcase in hand. Emma watched him with the innocent curiosity of a toddler who didn't understand that this man intended to tear apart her credibility piece by piece. Hello, Emma, Webb said in a voice dripping with false kindness. You said there was a man named Harry in the hole with you. Is that correct? Yes, Emma replied simply, her hand still resting on Rex's head. The German shepherd's ears twitched slightly, as if sensing tension. Emma, do you know what it means to tell the truth? Sarah Chun half rose from her seat. Objection, Your Honor. The witness has already been sworn in. I'm establishing the foundation for her understanding of truth versus imagination, Your Honor. Webb replied smoothly. Overruled. But move along, Mr. Webb. Webb smiled coldly. Emma, sometimes when we're scared, our minds make up friends to help us feel better. Do you understand that? Emma tilted her head, confused. Harry wasn't made up. He was really there. But Emma, the police searched that hole very carefully. They didn't find anyone else. How do you explain that? Emma's voice grew smaller, but remained firm. They didn't look in the right place. Harry was in the deep part, where it was really dark. Webb opened his briefcase and pulled out enlarged photographs of the excavation site. Emma, these pictures show the entire hole where you are found. There's no deep part where someone else could hide. The photographs were passed to the jury, showing the concrete foundation from every angle. Webb was right, the excavation was a single, narrow space with nowhere for another person to be concealed. Emma studied the photos with the serious expression of a child, trying to understand something beyond her comprehension. "That's not right," she said finally. "Those pictures don't show Harry's part." "Emma," Webb's voice grew sharper, "are you telling this court that these photographs are lying?" "Objection," Chun called out, argumentative and inappropriate for a child witness. "Sustained," Judge Hawthorne ruled. "Mr. Webb, moderate your tone." But Webb was just getting started. "Emma, you said Harry sang songs to you. What songs did he sing?" Emma brightened slightly. "He sang, 'You Are My Sunshine' and 'Amazing Grace.' He said his wife Susan taught him those songs." "And what else did Harry tell you about his wife Susan?" "He said she makes the best chocolate chip cookies in Arizona, and she has a garden with roses and tomatoes. He said she worries too much, and that she'd be scared if she knew he was lost." Webb made a show of checking his notes. "Emma, isn't it true that your grandmother sings 'You Are My Sunshine' to you? And doesn't your mother make chocolate chip cookies?" Emma nodded. "Yes, but so this Harry character just happened to like all the same things your family likes? Isn't that convenient?" Chun objected again, but the damage was being done. Several jurors were looking skeptical, their expressions shifting from sympathy to doubt. That's when Emma did something unexpected. She looked directly at Rex and said, "Tell them, Rex, you know Harry is real. You smelled him down there, didn't you?" Rex's reaction was immediate and startling. The German shepherd lifted his head and whined a low, urgent sound that seemed to vibrate through the courtroom. His amber eyes fixed on Emma with an intensity that made everyone present feel like they were witnessing something profound. "Rex knows," Emma said with absolute certainty. "Dogs don't lie. Rex smelled Harry down there, and Rex knows he's still trapped." Webb faltered for the first time. He hadn't expected the dog to react, and he certainly hadn't expected the child to use the animal as corroboration for her story. "Your Honor," Webb said, recovering quickly, "the dog's behavior is irrelevant." But Emma wasn't finished. She stood up in the witness chair, her small voice carrying across the silent courtroom with surprising strength. "Harry is still down there. He couldn't climb out because his leg was hurt. He's scared and hungry, and his wife Susan doesn't know where he is." Rex began barking, not the trained, controlled barking of a police dog, but the urgent, distressed barking of an animal trying to communicate something vital. Officer Mitchell tried to calm him, but Rex continued his agitated sounds. "Rex wants to go back there," Emma called out over the dog's barking. "He wants to help Harry. Good dogs always help people." A courtroom erupted in chaos. Spectators were talking loudly, reporters were frantically typing, and Judge Hawthorne was banging her gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order in this court!" But Emma wasn't done delivering her bombshell. As the noise died down, she looked directly at the jury with tears streaming down her face and said the words that would change everything. "Please don't let Harry die down there like I almost did. Rex found me, but Harry's still lost. His wife Susan is waiting for him to come home." In the gallery, an elderly woman with silver hair and a floral dress suddenly gasped and stood up. "Susan Peterson," she called out in a trembling voice. "That's me. I'm Susan Peterson. My husband Harold has been missing for 6 days." The silence that followed was deafening. Webb's briefcase slipped from his hands and hit the floor with a loud bang. Chun's mouth fell open. Judge Hawthorne stared at the woman in the gallery as if she were seeing a ghost. Rex stopped barking and sat perfectly still, his intelligent eyes moving between Emma and the elderly woman, as if he understood exactly what had just happened. Harold Peterson Harry wasn't Emma's trauma-induced hallucination. He was a real person who was still trapped, still waiting for rescue, still hoping his wife Susan would find him. And Rex had known it all along. The courtroom had transformed into something resembling a natural disaster command center. Judge Hawthorne abandoned all pretense of controlling the proceedings as Susan Peterson pushed through the crowd, her frail hands shaking as she approached the witness stand where Emma sat with Rex. "Harold?" Susan's voice cracked with 6 days of desperate hope and sleepless nights. "You really saw my Harold?" Emma nodded solemnly. "He's in the scary dark place. He said you'd be worried about him." Detective Sarah Martinez was already on her radio, calling for immediate emergency response to the Desert Oaks construction site. Code 3 response. Possible trapped victim at the excavation site on Camelback Road. Bring technical rescue, paramedics, and excavation equipment. Susan Peterson collapsed into a nearby chair, her legs no longer able to support her. "Harold has dementia," she told anyone who would listen, her words tumbling out in a rush of explanation and guilt. "He wanders sometimes. I only turned my back for 5 minutes to get the mail. When I came back inside, the front door was open and he was gone. We've been searching everywhere." Officer Mitchell knelt beside Rex, studying his partner's behavior with new understanding. "Jesus," he whispered. "You knew, didn't you, boy? You knew there was someone else down there." Rex whined and pawed at the ground, his amber eyes fixed on the courtroom doors, as if he could see through them to the construction site miles away. Judge Hawthorne made a decision that would be debated in legal circles for years to come. This court is in recess pending emergency rescue operations. Bailiff Morrison, clear the courtroom except for essential personnel. But Emma Rodriguez wasn't moving from that witness stand. "I want to go with Rex," she announced with the stubborn determination that only a 3-year-old could muster. "Harry asked me to send help. I have to make sure Rex finds him." "Absolutely not," Maria said, moving toward her daughter. "Emma, you're not going back to that place." "But Mommy, I promised. I promised Harry that Rex would help him." Sarah Chun found herself in the surreal position of negotiating with a toddler in the middle of a legal proceeding that had become a rescue mission. "Emma, Rex has to go do his job now. You did your job by telling everyone about Harry." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head firmly. "Rex needs me. He found me because I talked to him. He'll find Harry faster if I'm there to help." Dr. Foster, who had been observing from the gallery, approached the bench. "Your Honor, from a psychological standpoint, Emma has been through tremendous trauma related to that specific location. Returning there could be severely damaging." But Susan Peterson, still clutching the edge of her chair, looked up at Emma with eyes full of desperate hope. "Please," she whispered, "if you can help them find Harold." The debate continued for precious minutes, while emergency vehicles raced toward the construction site. Finally, Judge Hawthorne made another unprecedented decision. The child may observe the rescue operations from a safe distance, supervised by her parents and court personnel. But she does not go near that excavation. 23 minutes after Susan Peterson had identified herself in the courtroom, a convoy of vehicles arrived at Desert Oaks Estates. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, and a specialized urban search and rescue units surrounded the construction site where Emma's nightmare had begun and where Harold Peterson's might finally end. Rex was in full working mode now, his training taking over as he systematically searched the area around the original excavation site. But Emma had been right. He wasn't investigating the hole where she had been found. Instead, he led the team to a section of the foundation approximately 30 feet away, where concrete forms created a maze of interconnected spaces. "There's a whole network down there," Fire Captain Rodriguez announced, studying the architectural plans that Sunset Development had reluctantly provided. Multiple chambers, some connecting to storm drainage. If someone fell into the wrong section. Rex alerted at a spot where 2 concrete forms created a narrow opening, barely visible from ground level. The hole was deeper than the one where Emma had been trapped, and it angled away from the main excavation in a way that would have made Harold Peterson invisible to the original rescue teams. "Harold!" Captain Rodriguez called into the depths. "Harold Peterson, can you hear me?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then, faint and weak but unmistakably human, came a voice from the darkness. "Help. Please help me." The rescue team erupted into controlled activity. Harold Peterson was alive, conscious, and able to respond after 6 days, trapped in the desert heat with no food and minimal water from condensation. "Sir, this is the Phoenix Fire Department," Captain Rodriguez called down. "We're going to get you out of there. Can you tell me if you're injured?" "My leg. I think it's broken, and I'm so thirsty. Is Susan okay? Does she know where I am?" Emma, watching from behind the police barricade with her parents and Rex, began crying, not from fear or sadness, but from pure relief. "See?" she told Rex, hugging his neck tightly. "I told you Harry was real. The extraction took 4 hours." Harold Peterson, 74 years old and suffering from moderate dementia, had survived in conditions that would have killed many younger, healthier people. When the paramedics finally brought him to the surface on a rescue stretcher, the first person he saw was his wife Susan, who had been transported to the scene by police escort. "Susan?" Harold's voice was barely a whisper. "I got lost again, didn't I?" "It's okay, Harold," Susan sobbed, holding his hand as paramedics worked around her. "You're safe now. Emma found you. That little girl and her dog found you." As Harold Peterson was loaded into the ambulance, Emma broke away from her parents and ran toward the stretcher. "Harry! Harry, it's me!" Harold's eyes, clouded with confusion and dehydration, somehow focused on the small girl in the blue dress. "The little angel," he whispered. "You kept your promise." Emma nodded seriously. Rex kept his promise too. Good dogs always keep their promises. Rex approached the stretcher and gently licked Harold's hand, his tail wagging for the first time since they'd arrived at the construction site. Later, back at the courthouse, as news crews broadcast the miraculous rescue around the world, Emma Rodriguez sat in the witness chair one final time. The charges against Sunset Development had already been settled. No corporation wanted to face a jury after the day's events had proven that their negligence had nearly killed 2 people. Judge Hawthorne, her composure finally restored, looked down at the little girl who had turned her courtroom upside down and saved a man's life in the process. "Emma," she said gently, "is there anything else you'd like to say?" Emma looked at Rex, who sat beside her with the quiet dignity of a hero who knew his job was done. She thought about Harry singing songs in the darkness, about Rex never giving up on finding them both, about promises kept and people saved. She leaned over and whispered 2 words that made every adult in that courtroom understand the true meaning of loyalty, courage, and love. "Thank you." Rex's tail thumped once against the floor, and in that simple sound, everyone heard what the little girl really meant. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for proving that sometimes the most impossible things are the most true." Harold Peterson recovered fully and returned home to Susan's chocolate chip cookies and rose garden. Emma Rodriguez grew up to become a search and rescue coordinator, inspired by the dog who had saved her life. Rex received the Medal of Valor and lived to be 15, spending his retirement years visiting children in hospitals. But in courtroom 4B, where it all happened, they still talk about the day a 3-year-old girl said 2 words that changed everything and proved that heroes come in all sizes, some of them with 4 legs and hearts bigger than anyone imagined possible.